Three, two, one. Hello everybody and welcome to a preview of Vuelta Andalucia. My name is Jesper and I'm joined by the Holy Moly. How are you?
Very well, very well.
I can't take credit of that because a good friend, Jesper Renema, let's say put the caption to a picture I put on Twitter today, and it was so good. Like, I've been cracking up from that caption all day, and I've been waiting to use that on air. If you're watching this on video format, go to our Twitter feed and just look at that picture and just imagine holy moly. Doesn't go any better. But tonight we're gonna preview 3 races, and the first is Ruta del Sol, which was last year one of the best races of the season. It was Contador versus Froome, the showdown. Why don't you walk us through exactly what happened last year?
Last year was just, as you said, one of the best races of the season. There was 2 brutal mountaintop finishes, really steep. Froome was caught out on the first one. Contador beat him convincingly. Froome was in a horrible position at the start of the climb. Everybody had written him off, and then come back to the second one. Froome does him. I can't remember how the amount of seconds. It was, what was it, 1, 2, 3 seconds, something like that. Ended up winning by. Lobato took a very good uphill sprint stage the day we heard the famous Carlton Kirby quote about Edward Tunes and his frozen chickens. It was a fantastic edition of the race last year because we had Froome versus Contador and the extreme parcours that the organisers decided to use.
In the end, Froome won by 2 seconds over Contador, and the reason it was so good was because everybody ruled out Froome on the stage where Contador just kept on attacking off the front and finally broke Froome. And the day after that, he just shut up everybody and won. I think it was by 29 seconds on the line and by 2 seconds on the end, which is just insane. And everybody was so hyped for the Tour because of this race and because of the Dauphiné as well. And then the Tour was kind of a bit of a letdown.
Contador had burned his matches at the Giro. As much as I wanted to believe it was possible for him to go and do that, the double, it just wasn't possible. And Contador just wasn't up to it at the Tour. He was too tired. It looks like it just cannot be done. Although I would love to see Froome give it a go at some point to try the Giro Tour double.
There's talk about Valverde doing all 3 Grand Tours this year.
I see that, but he's not going to ride the Tour for GC. He's riding the Giro for GC. He will have a huge idea that he's going to win the Olympics, so he needs to go to the Tour to get some good legs in him, but he won't be riding that for GC. Same as Nibali. Nibali will ride Giro and he'll ride Tour, but Tour won't be GC. It will just be to keep his form up before going to Rio. But I would love for him it just looks too hard to do the Giro Tour. It's not many weeks in between that, but Froome would be the man who could prove yes or no.
You say the reason last year was so good was partially because of the start list, but also because of the challenging parkour. How would you rate this year's parkour compared to last year's parkour?
Not as hard. Not as hard. They've went back to a much more balanced route where we have maybe 2 stages for the sprinters. We've got 2 stages, 1 stage for punchers, 1 stage for the mountain climbers, and then 1 time trial. So much more balanced, which is seen it attract quite a few of the sprinters. Not still an abundance of sprinters, because you look at Spain and most of the Spanish races have tough climbs, but you come to Andalucia, you're going to get some nice weather, although it's not quite as great as it has been in previous years. And you're going to get some good racing. It's always hilly. Even the flat stages are hilly. This is the land where the road book usually is wrong. So we cannot rely on anything the road book tells us. It's going to be harder than it seems, even on these really flat days.
See, I have to thank my focus group that I'm calling it now, the first cycling team competition group that is together with me. Got a few guys on there that helped me look up race profiles and so on. That final climb on stage 5 is nuts. I'm excited to see how they're going to ride out that. I mean, just describe that stage.
It's one of my favourites, I've got to be honest. It's Penas Blancas, 15 kilometres, 6.3%. Was ridden in the Vuelta 2013 when Leo Koenig won the stage. brilliant stage for Koenig. I'm one of, like many people, big fan of his. He was riding for NetApp and Jura. They won a stage in a Grand Tour. Fairy tale finish for him. Managed to get away when some of the big favourites were looking at each other. That was the year that Horner won. And yeah, beat Danny Moreno. Took the win. It's a great climb. Really, really good climb. The GC riders who are here, they're going to get a proper test that day.
Speaking of the GC riders, let's take a look at the start list. Not as strong as last year, but I mean, you look at it, you don't see Froome, you don't see Contador, but I still think this is going to be one hell of a race. Let's start with the ever-dominant Team Sky.
I mean, you saw the team that they had in Valencia, and then you look at this team, and it's definitely a step down. They lost Bennett and Chousty yesterday to illness. Nicholas Roche has been called up in place, but it's just not as strong. Looking to support poles in the mountain, on the mountain. Now, maybe that's the reason. There's only one mountain stage, so maybe you can get away with only having two support riders. So we've got Mikel Nieve, and they'll have Nicholas Roche. Roche won't be quite as great as he has been. You know, he's a later in the season type of rider. So we'll have to see how he goes. Walt Poles was simply unbelievable in Valencia. I've never seen him as good as that. He won the time trial. Now, he did go out early, got the best of the weather conditions, but then he followed it up with a win on that brutal climb. Yeah, that was an amazing performance by him. He will go into this full of confidence. He still wants to lead Sky at the Giro. They've signed Landa, who's not raced yet, now ill. Apparently pulled out of his first race because he was still trying to sort his time trial position out. Not a great start for Mikel Landa. So Poles, if he can continue to ride it the way he did, he'll be sending a big message out to the leaders at Team Sky. So Poles is their number one rider. There's no plan B, there's no plan C.
See, for you guys out there creating your first cycling team, I see they made a mistake. Because on this start list, they have Bennett and Chousty instead of Nicholas Roche, which is a big difference. Because if Chousty went here, I think he would have been a joint leader with Wout Poels, which is also the reason why he's on my fantasy team, and I now have to go swap him out for somebody else. So all the hours of work just nullified in one little change there. But Wout Poels, just how impressive was he in Valencia?
I know he's a good rider. I didn't think he had that level of performance in him. I've got to be honest, that was a massive surprise for me. I won't underestimate him again.
So that sounds promising when we get to the star section. Next up, a man that hasn't ridden in like forever, Roman Kreuziger, joined with Rafael Majka on Tinkoff Saxo. Just Tinkoff now.
Yeah, same joint leadership. Kreuziger would be surprising to see him come back and dominate and be up there in the top three. This is about Majka. He's been away at altitude training. Last season was a bit of a slow burner in that he started quite poorly and ended brilliantly in the Vuelta. He's targeting the Giro this year, which means it can't be a slow start. He has to be there right away. He's been at altitude as well. They're doing the normal. We'll see how it goes over the first couple of days. Now, the first couple of days are relatively straightforward if you're a GC rider. Stage 2 does contain a climb near the end, but it shouldn't really put any of the big riders out. The last two stages are where it's at. We've got the time trial followed by the big mountain stage. So if you are looking to have a couple of days in the saddle to get your rhythm back, your race speed, then this race offers you that opportunity. So if this is Majka in the kind of Vuelta form or looking towards some good Giro form, he would be a big rider for this race.
Towards the end of St. Louis, he actually looked quite good on that final climb. Compared to the fact that it's the first race of the season and you wouldn't expect him to peak and compete against these Argentinian riders, I think he's looking like he could be in form for this race.
I mean, he's such a talented rider. You know, he's still young. He's won stage at the Giro. I think he won Vuelta. He's such a talented. He's won Tour de France stages. I mean, we all remember him, the little wink to the camera in the Tour. That Tour was that was crazy. He was on a different level compared to most of the other riders there. Vuelta last season, when you're thinking, you know, are you really going to step up now and become one of the best riders in the world? He answered his critics there. He did step up. He put in an amazing performance in what was one of the most demanding Grand Tours you're likely to see ever. So he's such a talent. But first race of the season, you can't guarantee. Uh,
Second.
well, first real race of the season,
What? St. Louis? Come on.
you can't guarantee what he's going to be like. Most of these riders here, their first main target will either be Paris-Nice or it will be Tirreno Adriatico. So, as much as I like this race, most people will use it as a warm-up, especially if you've been away at altitude over the last couple of weeks.
Instead of going back later on, I think we should just stay at the point where we are right now. Because Team Sky, Ben Swift, Tinkoff, Jay McCarthy. What do you think of those two guys compared to some of the other fast guys that are here? And how much support will they get?
Swift, yeah, he's won stages in Spain before. It has to be a hard race. He has to have some of the other faster men dropped. He is much faster than Jay McCarthy.
But how much support will he get from Sky?
How much support does he need? If you're looking at a small, reduced bunch, maybe of about 40 riders, say on stage 2, Sky will have 6 riders in there, so they'll have a couple of guys just to put them in the right position. I mean, don't be that going to do a big, massive Katusha lead out here. It's just a case of putting Swift kind of third wheel and then hoping that he can finish it off.
See, Swift seriously was trending because of a reason. He's a great sprinter. He's gonna do well here in Spain. It's tough conditions. I think he's gonna do well here. But moving on, Mr. Consistent. First time we're gonna get to speak about him this year. Looking interesting. Coming off form in what was that recent race? We just got beat by Gilbert. Almeria? No.
Yeah, Murcia and Almeria.
Yeah, that was it.
Murcia was Saturday when he lost. Almeria was the
windy race.
Yes.
That was interesting to watch. But when you looked up the highlights afterwards, the conditions weren't exactly ideal for cycling. So I understand why they cut it down to a criterium instead.
Yeah, it's a joke.
But
Valverde's here. He is the king of Andalucia. He is a magnificent rider in this part of Spain. Now, we just touched on the weather there. Reliably informed by a good friend of mine on Twitter that it's going to be relatively cold in Andalucia over the next couple of days. He should know he lives there. So we're a wee bit colder. Valverde likes the hot conditions. Always goes well in Andalucia, whether that's a Vuelta that's here or whether that's this race. Time trial is not great for him, but then again, it's
in Spain. Yes.
Movie star, so he might do a bit better than you would expect, and then it's all down to that final climb. He would have liked a kind of uphill sprint stage where he could have taken some bonus seconds and maybe distanced some of the GC riders. It will be hard for him to win this race, but if he does get a miraculous TT performance, then of course he could challenge.
See, they have Lobato on this team, and I'm seeing so many mediocre sprinters. But last year we saw somewhat the same, let's say, features where Pim Lichtek took the first stage win. How like this first stage, will it be a sprint or will it be a breakaway finish?
Should be a sprint. Should be a sprint. But as people who have watched us before will know that first stages can often be nervous affairs, especially when there isn't a real dominant sprint team here. However, Cofidis are here for Buhani, so they should be taking control of the race, as will Movistar, because they will want Lobato to have a little sprint in his home area.
Looking at Movistar, I mean, we got Ruben Fernandez, we got Daniel Moreno. Moreno, could he do a top 10 here?
Again, the TT is going to go against him, but what I said earlier, when we were here in Penas Blancas 2013, Moreno was second, so he knows the climb, he's done well here before. He'll be here to support Valverde. His TT will ensure that he will not win, but top 10 should definitely be on the cards for him. Ruben Fernandez, very, very talented young man who should also be looking to do a good performance. He can TT better than Moreno, but Moreno's probably going to cope with that climb a bit better than he will. But Movistar will be all in for Valverde, no matter what.
Well, can Ruben Fernandez stay on his bike? That's the issue.
He's done okay this season. He's not fallen yet.
This season, with like 3 races ridden so far.
This season.
That's kind. That's very kind of you. Since we're on somewhat of a schedule tonight with 3 previews, I think we'll be jumping around a tiny bit, looking at some of the other favorites before moving to the smaller teams. I'm looking at 2, let's say, climbers with a nice finesse of time trialing. I'm looking at Van Garderen and Wilco Kelderman of either BMC and Team Lotto NL. What do you think of those 2?
Yeah, big challengers. Van Garderen, He's my favourite for the race. TT is right up his street. Usually does very good time trials and 1 week races. Has targeted this race to get a good win. He starts the season very well. He was second in Oman last year, beaten by Rafa Vals. If there'd been a time trial in that race, he would most certainly have won the overall. Very, very strong competitor, riding for a team in form already. You just mentioned it, Gilbert won in Murcia, so they're on fire. He's got a very strong team around him. Sammy Sanchez, Ben Hermans, Damiano Caruso, Brent Bookwalter, Atapuma, Gilbert. BMC are going to be one of the main protagonists in this race. Van Garderen will have to start it. For me, as the favourite, despite what Wout Poels has done in Valencia.
And despite Valverde also being the king of Andalucia.
Yeah, just everything points to TJ for me. The parcours, the TT, it's great for him. The climb isn't, it's long, but it's not ridiculously steep, 6.3%. So it's a good climb for him. Kelderman, first race of the season, not sure how he'll react. If he is on form, he will be a strong contender here. Another who can time trial extremely well on his day. 2015 wasn't the best season for him after what was a very strong 2014, where he top 10 in the Giro. He was fourth in the Dauphiné. The Dauphiné that year, you will remember, for Contador and Froome going toe-to-toe. So that was a big performance by him. Last season, not brilliant. He'll be looking to get back up there this season. He's still young. I think he's still only 24 years old, so he's got plenty of time. But after a poor year, a rider off, they want to start well.
And the pressure is off on Lotto NL because last year I think it took them 4 to 5 months to get their first stage win. Groenewegen already got that for them, so I think he's gonna be praised like a king in Dutch media if he hasn't been already. So the pressure's not really on them. I think Kelderman could do well here. Like in my book, he's a lesser Van Garderen. He can do everything Van Garderen can, but just a tiny bit worse. So I'm looking at him to top 5, top 7 here in this race. Moving on to a fellow Dutchman, Bauke Mollema. Pointed out by my focus group, they watched a day inside Trek training camp, and you could actually see his training schedule and where he's supposed to peak, and it's nowhere near Andalucia. For that reason only, I have not even put him on my fantasy team, even though this is Bauke Mollema.
Interesting.
Do you trust that source?
No.
I figured.
Well, listen, he's is he going to be in top form? No. Is he in the same position as most of the other GC riders? Yes. Nobody's going to be 100% of their form yet. Most of these guys are focused on the Tour of the Giro. Mollema was second in Tirreno Adriatico last season, so he does carry good form through the winter. He spends a lot of time on his time trial bike since joining Trek, which has improved that discipline a lot. He will be targeting a top 5 finish here.
I'm looking at his teammate Fabio Fellini, who's my dark horse for the GC. He's a great time trialist. That final climb is going to be difficult, but he's going to keep up 4 out of 5 days. And that final day, if he can keep up just a tiny bit, look at him being top 10. I mean, Criterium International last year, he was 4th behind Pinot, Perrault. There were a few other races, I think it was in Spain actually, that he did well as well.
Yeah, not for me.
No? I like him. If you're out there with your first cycling fantasy team, for me, he'd be worth the 8th or 9th spot in your domestique. Also, the fact that he can sprint after a long day in the saddle, and it is Spain. The conditions are very rough. It's not quite Qatar, which was an amazing race to watch, but I think he's worth it. Looking further down, I mean, Daniel Navarro was strong in Valenciana, or at least he showed up. I wouldn't exactly call him strong, but he showed early form.
Yeah, it was great to see him back, doing well. Another who had a fairly torrid 2015, lots of crashes and injury, and just didn't get on very well. So important for him to start the season off on the right footing. Time trial will destroy his hopes of finishing on the podium. Another contender for a solid top 10 spot.
Exactly. My dark horse of the race, though, can you guess who that is? We haven't mentioned him yet.
Surprise me.
Stephen Cummings. Stephen Cummings.
Stephen Cummings, really?
Yes, really. He can time trial, and he can climb to a certain degree. That time trial, he'll be top 5, top 3, at least. And then on the climb, it's kind of like Verleen. He's not following the best, but all the Super Joker has to do is finish somewhere near top 10. And Cummings could do that on Dimension Data.
I'll be nice to you. I'll be
Yeah.
nice to you. Yeah, I'll let you change your pick, seeing as he's not riding.
What is this? Okay, this is dumb. He's still on the start list. Is he really not riding?
Yeah, he's really not riding.
Then Fabio Fellini has to be the dark horse.
Okay.
Same skill set, just a tiny bit worse off the climb. But is he really? Okay, I'm sorry for cycling for this race. I have to open up pro cycling stats. You guys can do better than that. Is he really not riding?
Yeah, Maya is their main hope. They've also got Frail making his debut, Igor Anton making his debut, Svitsov making his debut.
Let me open up pro cycling stats. I'm sorry for cycling, but today we're going with pro cycling stats, I guess.
There's no Steve Cummings.
All that practice, all that research, just wasted. Because Stephen Cummings also always wins. The last 7 or 9 years, he's won a stage in the first month of racing that he started. It goes back to like 2007 that he's won a stage in the first race he's ridden, or the first month he's ridden. Which is just
All that research, Jesper. All
insane.
that research.
Just out the window. Thank you very much, Thomas and the rest of the crew at First Cycling. No, you guys do a great job. It's just can't get it right every time. But that's all. That's not all the climbers, but I think that's the main protagonists. Have we missed any that are worth a discussion?
Yes.
And who might that
I
be?
talked about Lotto, Bart de Klerk, Tim Vellens. I Am Cycling, Matthias Frank. Dimension Data, Cam Maya. And that would be most of your main hitters there. Maybe Victor Delapart of CCC.
I'm just sorry. I'm just reading the chat now after that burn, and it's painful. It's very painful. But yeah, those are the main contestants for this race. Before we move on to the star section, though, if it comes down to a sprint, Bohani or Kakar, get to choose this time. No Pellucci here.
Bohani.
Did you not learn your lesson from Besecius? Nah. Bohani's probably faster when confidence gets it right, but Bohani was beat by Groenewegen. That says a lot about Bohani.
Because of his lead out, it wasn't Bohani's fault. If the lead out had been better, he would have won that sprint.
Or will it be better here?
Yes, because they bring Borut Bozic into the lead out for the first time, which I'm really pleased to see. I hope he gets a much further up. He was used up earlier on before they've got Laporte again, who had that mistake as the final man, hoping Jeffrey Soupe actually comes in as final man, not Laporte. Cofidis will get it right. Buhani is on the verge of stepping up to that elite bracket of sprinters. Coquard is fast. He's got some early wins under his belt, but unfair to compare the two of them. Coquard has started the season very well. He's at his 100% right now. Bohani is just getting to that point. Bohani's faster than Coquard. There's not a question in my mind.
Even when Kakar is at 100% right now and Bohani's at like 80, and Kakar brings Petit, who's on form as well, with the most wins of 2016.
He can bring Petit all he wants. They're not going to touch the Cofidis sprint train. I suppose the big question really would be is where does Groenewegen finish? Because Groenewegen was the man on form in Valencia. He took a stage. He won the bunch sprint behind Vandenberg. Groenewegen is the man who they should all be worried about here. Buhani will be concerned, Coquard will be concerned. He was seriously fast. Had a few riders phoning me asking, who's this Dutch boy? A few sprinters worried by his impressive performance, who are now starting to stand up and take notice of him. That was a seriously quick sprint he put in.
Sort of burst your bubble, but he's not on either Pro Cycling Stats or First Cycling start list. Dylan Groenewegen
You're joking!
is not on either start list.
Well, neither of those two riders will be essentially worried about him now.
It's not been a good start to the evening, has it? No, I'm looking at Pro Cycling Stats and he's definitely not on the Team Lotto and our start list. But he's fast.
He's in Algarve, that's what it is.
Preview for another time. We're actually later on tonight, so
Bohani.
Bohani's probably the fastest. Final mentions though, Caio Real, Arroyo, and Hugh Carthy. Hugh Carthy was on form in the earlier Mallorca races. How well is he doing right now?
Not telling you.
Okay, so that's definitely a guy David has money on. So let's move on to something you guys have all been waiting for, the stars. And while I set this up, could you please talk about your one-star riders?
My one-star riders are Danny Navarro, as already mentioned. Tim Vellens, big year for Tim as he starts to look to make the transition to a Grand Tour rider where he'll be targeting the Giro, top 10. Time trial's good for him, final stage is good for him. I think he'll go well. And his Lotto teammate Bart de Klerk, who from nowhere smashed back onto the stage racing scene with second Tour of Poland. He time trialled well that day. Form continued, 14th in the Vuelta. If de Klerk's held his form over the winter, he should be capable of finishing in the top 10.
See, I'm red-headed now because, of course, my dark horse Stephen Cummings is going to be on 1-stars. So that leaves out a spot. So I'm going to steal one of yours. I like Barty Cluck. I remember him last year in Polonia. I'm going to steal that one and replace Cummings with him instead. And, of course, you got the two Trek boys, Joachim Mollema and Fabio Fellin. You got to have Mollema on here. No matter what his... whatever you've seen from that video, Joachim Mollema at 100% is just going to burst. He's going to get top 3 no matter what in this. Fabio Fellini, though, I really believe in him. I really do believe in him. I don't know what you got against him, but on the right...
I don't have anything against him. It's the fact that the final stage has a climb which is 15 kilometres at 6.3%. That's what will stop him from finishing in the top 10.
Fair point, but I think still he's going to finish on the 9th, 10th, 11th spot, which is worthy of a Super Joker. Joachim Mollema, of course, got to be there.
2 stars, Mollema, Kelderman, Micah.
So you mentioned Kelderman and Micah. I agree on both. Mollema so high? You haven't watched the video?
I think he'll be bitterly disappointed if he doesn't finish in the top 5.
Yeah, but the company here is going to be really tough. For top 3, top 5, it's going to be very competitive, I think.
It is.
And Mollema's not going to get in that bubble.
Mm.
In my professional opinion. I got to add that.
I would disagree with you.
Uh-huh. So Kelderman and Micah, we touched on them earlier. Kelderman obviously because of the time trial, and Micah because of his climbing abilities.
Yeah, and he can also do a decent time trial. The time trial actually does contain a couple of climbs. Both are about 1k. The first one comes in opening half, which is about 9%, 10%, so it's a serious climb. And then the final kilometre rises at 5%. So it's not just a normal time trial for a pure TT racer. GC riders will be able to limit their losses on that stage.
And for 3 stars, of course, I mean, there are a few guys we haven't mentioned yet, but I think we agree on most of them. Wout Poels, TJ van Garderen, Alejandro Valverde.
Snap.
Exactly. I mean, those top 3 guys, races like these are pretty self-explanatory when you get to this point, because these 3 guys, I mean, Mr. Consistent, Valverde, every race he goes to, he competes. I even think he's going to compete in the Tour, even though Olympics are right after. Van Garderen, everybody saw Oman last year, or at least they saw the highlights where he got beaten by Rafa Valls. He's strong at this point of the season. And Wout Poels, I mean, next up on the Sky train of future GC contenders. It's exciting to watch him ride. What do you think of these guys?
Yeah, exact same. You know, and to be honest, I think Poels and Van Garderen are above Valverde, and due to the time trial, it will be very interesting to see a Wout Poels who looks close to 100% versus a TJ Van Garderen who would be about 90%. It will be very interesting to see how they go on. A quick mention for somebody like Sammy Sanchez, who will be there towards the end supporting his leader, Sky. They'll have Nive towards the end, but as mentioned, they're a bit weaker than BMC, which is unlike Sky, who have started the season in sensational form. It's going to be a good battle on that final stage.
See, I'm looking forward to not seeing Valverde in the time trial. That's what I'm looking forward to. That's why I believe that he will also be the overall winner of Ruta del Sol. Who do you think will win?
Van Garderen.
So you've already heard my dark horse, which is Fabio Fellini. You're yet to mention yours.
Okay.
A dark horse is a guy who's supposed to finish, he can either be top 10 on a stage and go outrageous, or top 10 in the GC.
Cameron Meyer.
For GC?
For GC.
He can time trial, but can he climb?
He can do both. Moving to Dimension Data, new lease of life. He will be team leader, which he didn't get many opportunities to do in Orica. He can post a good TT. He can climb well. He's already got good racing in his legs from the Tour Down Under. Cameron Meyer is the man who's going to surprise a few.
On that note, guys, thank you guys for watching the Ruta del Sol preview. Next up, we've got either Oman or Algarve. Make sure to watch those on cycling.tv. And if you're in the chat right now, keep watching. Thank you very much for watching today's preview. Here in the end, I'd like to thank this month's friends of the show, and those are Lost Brolin, Aaron Forks, Raymond Pinero, Aragonite, Marion Starkley, Cecil Fursch, Tish Tooling, Tommy Loppy, Sean Hurst, Wagnerus, Lucas, Kenneth, and Kenny. Thank you very much for your continued support of Cycling.tv. If you too want to become a friend of the show, go over to Cycling.tv/livestream, hit the donate button, and send us some love. All donations are highly appreciative. Thank you very much, and I'll see you guys next time.